Welcome back to God Deserves Better, the program dedicated to equipping the saints to create like our Creator. I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And I'm your host, Jonathan Laura.
Welcome back, guys. We have another episode here. This episode, we're going a little bit, we're going crazy on the Nolan. If you want to introduce this idea, Johnny.
We talk about Nolan a lot on this podcast. If you're a frequent listener, he's pretty big in his craft. He's a master of his craft, and he has the gamut of 12 films that he's made. And we've critiqued him before if you've heard previous episodes.
Yeah,
but
some of our early ones, I confess that I was a Christian fartist. Yeah, so that's taking yourself way too seriously in the craft. The craft outshines the message.
We think that's what Nolan is pretty much. He takes himself way too seriously. But to have a little bit of fun before we send you off to your Christmas and New Year's, we're going to do a ranking of Nolan's 12 films.
Explicitly from a Christian perspective.
Yeah, we're gonna grade them on a Christian rubric,
and not just like biblical rubric or anything like that, but rather from a film perspective too.
Yes,
but from a Christian.
What is the most excellent film of his? And we're gonna do it by tiers. Yeah,
it's a good way to put it. What's the most excellent, God honoring film of Nolan's filmography here?
Oh yeah. So as you can see here, we have our tier list. We got from S tier down to F tier and all 12 of his films in order of release at the bottom. And we will go through each one. And we are going to give ourselves 3 minutes to discuss each one and before we rank it. And Zach has the timer. Whenever 3 minutes is up, you will hear this sound. Nice.
Yeah.
We felt like that sounded the most Nolan on the
out of the Apple
default
stock. Noises here. That's what we had to go with here. So
it sounds like Tenet.
Yeah. Ooh. Do I jump in?
Yeah. Let's jump in. So let's go ahead and we will start now with Zach. If you want to go ahead and start the timer, we will start with Nolan's first film, Following, released in 1998. And we're not going to go into the synopsis of each of them. We're just going to we got 3 minutes, so we're just going to try to jump right in.
Yeah, that's fair. And spoilers, obviously. If you're a big Nolan guy, you probably have seen all these films anyway. If you haven't, pause and listen to them, or just listen to our episode, and we'll give you the highs and lows basically of each of these.
See what we think of them.
Yeah. And I think it's fair that we're giving this one about 2.5 minutes because this film is about an hour, I think, or maybe even shorter than that.
It's his shortest film by far. It's just past being a short film. By the legal standard.
And they filmed it all on the weekend over the course of a year. It's very admirable. Has black and white cinematography, low budget. The acting is good. The concept is good. It is very noir-y. And, it's been a minute since I've seen it, but I do remember being impressed by it. And it actually kind of stands out in his filmography in terms of there's no time jumping or anything like that. I rank that pretty high.
I thought there was.
Is there?
There's some non-linear editing going on. I saw it last year for the first time, actually. And
there you go. I stand corrected.
But it's kind of like it's his signature thing. The way he edits all his films is non-linear storytelling. And I actually found it a little confusing, the non-linear stuff. I mean, that's just me. Maybe someone smarter, it's easier for them to follow. Memento wrecked me, but we'll get to that one next.
We'll get to that one.
But yeah, I agree. Acting was good, especially for like the budget. These are probably actors that weren't getting paid a whole lot, and I think it's a very solid start for Nolan.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if it gets ranked any higher because if it's his first film, first outing. Yeah, I would say it's pretty standard mid tier.
I would say probably B tier for me. I saw an interesting quote from. Or it's not a quote, I didn't pull the quote, but it's from Empire magazine. They said at the time of the release, they said that this film tries to run before it can walk. And I find that really interesting because it's kind of Nolan's thing. Again, the nonlinear editing. Yeah. It tries to do like some really big things before
it even masters the basics. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's fair.
But it's still translated very well and for a good viewing.
Yeah. And again, I think it stands out amongst his filmography at this point as being just slightly different. Of course it has like feelings and fingerprints of Nolan, but just the story, and the turn at the end, I guess, with the bad guy, the guy that's
Cobb, yeah.
Like, I can't remember the exact like scenario exactly, but he's a criminal of some kind, and he basically frames the main character, who is one who's following people around for no reason, just because he wants to observe people.
Yeah, the main guy, I forget his name, but he was like a writer, and he followed people. That's why it's called The Following. Oh, there's our timer. But basically, I guess this is our synopsis. But he's following people just to like, get some writing material. And he follows Cobb, this one guy who's actually like a thief, a serial thief, and he just does it for the fun of it. And so he thinks he's following Cobb, but Cobb is actually like following him in a way, and like Zach said, ruins him in the end, frames him for the crimes.
Yeah, basically, don't be a weirdo, I think, is the message of this film.
Don't be too curious.
In terms of like the Christian perspective, there's no nudity. I think there's some language. I think it accurately depicts reality, and
good writing.
Depraved people, good writing, sharp, intelligent, obviously, and so you that's what you want to see from a film that's trying to depict God's reality. If it's going to be
solid B.
Solid B.
Yeah. All right. So, Zach, you want to start the timer again? We're going to go on to Memento.
Oh, yes. I really like Memento.
I do too.
I think it holds up. It's his magnum opus. Like in terms of form and the editing, the nonlinear editing, this story fits perfectly with that because it's so knit with the character. I think it's a lot of times where Nolan struggles is with the characters, humanizing them. But I think this main character who has memory problems and so can only remember like 3 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
You really feel that subjective point of view in that edit and how it swaps over. It's like both forward and backward at the same time. That's brilliant. That's your career is built on that. That's great. So I rank this probably S tier.
S tier. Okay. I really like the nonlinear editing. I think this is like the only film where it really works to its benefit. Like with Following and some of the other ones, I think it doesn't really add much to it.
Yeah.
There's been directors who have made films that aren't like 100% linear and it works, but like Memento is like that to its extreme.
Yes.
It's all out of sorts, and it just matches the character being also out of sorts.
Yeah, and it's intriguing. Like the plot itself is intriguing. Again, a noir-y kind of thing. I think this is really early on for Nolan, that he's doing his best Michael Mann impression most of the time for the first like 4 or 5 movies, where we have like criminals as being the main character or subject. And it's not every movie, but I do think that is somewhat, from a Christian perspective, you have to handle that delicately. You can't let them get away with it.
We are all bad guys. I mean, in a sense. So it has to be done delicately.
We're all criminals, but to identify and think that crime is okay, especially if it's killing someone. Like at the end of Memento, he kills for no reason. He just thinks, he basically
thinks it's for a reason. I thought, right?
He does. He thinks he's killed the killer of his wife.
Yeah.
But in reality, at the last second, you realize that he's like, it'll just reset again. It doesn't matter. It's kind of nihilistic. It doesn't matter if I killed him, like as long as I keep having a purpose, basically. And the purpose is kind of self-constructed.
With that said, the nihilism and the kind of like it doesn't matter, and the villain being the main character, should we bump it down to A? And also, I want to say that the lack of clarity. I mean, at times it works, but like I know we say clarity is very important.
Yeah.
And it refuses to give any clarity, this film, on a lot of things. Does that kind of work against it, or do you?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I'd bump it down.
Cool. Let's do A tier. I think that's a good spot for it.
Agreed. There's some stronger themes in there too about him and his wife and whatnot. So I think that holds it at A tier.
That little like side story of like, I guess the guy who's supposed to represent him.
The guy who killed his wife with the insulin.
Yeah.
Or his wife basically had him kill her. Again, pretty nihilistic. So just off the top of my dome, I think that does bump that down to A tier. But certainly in terms of the filmic side of things, the craft side, that's pumping super high because that's his thesis. That's his whole thing.
This is Nolan time to the max. Or not really. No, I think that comes later on actually. But this is when he stepped on the stage. This is a good summation of who he is in a
In
film.
terms of editing, I think this is because I think that's where he really stood out in terms of cerebral. That's where he earned the cerebral thriller kind of thing, where it's like, ooh, he's giving you maybe a basic story, but it's in a different way, and it's really pushing the form. I think that's why that ranks so high. But up next is
Insomnia. Yeah, from 2002.
We have started the clock.
Yeah, very weird to think like Christopher Nolan made a film with Al Pacino and Robin Williams.
Yeah, that's true.
I tend to forget that.
Yeah, and it's a pretty dark film as well. I mean, there's all sorts of seedy characters and ambiguity and whatnot. With Robin Williams being a predator, I think, right? Like
yes, I believe so. Was he the guy who committed?
I'm pretty sure he's the killer.
The crime that they were trying to solve to begin with.
But Al Pacino ends up killing his own partner.
Yeah.
And so that's like in the middle of the hunt. And so now that's weighing on him and whatnot. And again, I think it's
very good. I think it's very good writing, very good acting.
I mean, you have some of the greatest actors near the end of their careers,
right before
near
they
the
fell
end.
off.
Like late punches for them. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Again, we're still very much in Nolan's playground, sandbox, wheelhouse, if you will, where there's this whole thing. They're like in Alaska where the sun doesn't set for like 3 months out of the year, and so that's the whole insomnia aspect.
Yes, I actually want to say I feel like that this film is actually very Christian in a lot of ways.
Oh,
it deals with a guy who's like trying to run away from his sin.
Yeah,
I think this is like. I guess the sun in Alaska represents God, like always seeing, it's never setting, and it's causing him to like stay awake, and it eats him up until
it's exposing
he
things.
confesses in the end.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of want to rank it kind of high. I don't know.
I think it's
A tier,
probably A tier,
lower A
tier. It's certainly unsung in terms of his filmography. It's certainly overshadowed. So
it's probably the one I saw the least recently.
Same. I think I've seen it twice.
I've seen it once. Yeah,
I haven't had like a super critical eye on it every time, but I agree. I think A tier is a solid bet here.
Yeah, with the Christian elements really helping it.
That's punching it way up. And again, craft wise, it's competent. We're not getting anything.
But I could see like what the kind of film we're trying to tell our viewers to make, and that we want to make as well. This would fall into that. Like it doesn't illicitly mention Christ at all, but it's something that every human has dealt with to some degree. This is just like
everybody has a conscience, even those, I know it's controversial to say, even those who are like pathologically unable to feel guilt and whatnot. I think there's actually a lot of explanations for that they actually have like a super conscience in some ways, that they've shut themselves off so much.
Interesting.
And so anyway, that's a different podcast. But yeah, I agree. We're, in terms of the filmic quality, solid entry, great acting. I think acting.
It's not very Nolan, and I think that might help in some ways.
Yeah. What eventually emerges as his like kind of stink, his style, and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to suffer through a lot of that in this.
Yeah,
so that was our timer on Insomnia.
Sweet. All right, and now we go on to Batman Begins.
Oh, dude, here we go. All right,
this is where his peak begins.
This is definitely his best Batman
rise.
movie. His best Batman movie, easily.
Ooh, that's a hot take. I know you've told me that before, but our viewers might not know that.
I know. We're starting to get into the hot takes, although we have like a nuclear level take.
Oh yeah,
coming up here.
Wink,
but
wink.
Hold on to your butts here. But yeah, Batman Begins. It's perfect. Like the technician behind it, Nolan.
Yeah.
His desire to tell a nonlinear story, that works perfectly here. We have the origin story. We open up.
It's not overdone.
It's not overdone. This is probably the movie I've seen the most of his. As well, reinvents Batman, and that was huge. That was huge.
I think this gets overlooked by Dark Knight as like the one that set the future of the superhero genre, of how it is like today, or I guess not today, but
the gritty, realistic thing. That was this for sure. You could take the campiest entry in the superhero anthology before that,
Scarecrow.
Well, Scarecrow's awesome, and certainly the best villain I think you could open up in a non, like in your first entry with a character like that. You don't go Nemesis.
And Ra's al Ghul, I guess, or
Oh yeah. I'm a big follower of that formula. If you're going to do a trilogy, don't open up with the number one nemesis of that guy. in the first film. You can hint at them.
Hard, yeah.
You could hint at them like they do at the end with the Joker card. But craft-wise, this is amazing. Performance-wise, this is amazing. Writing, this is super sharp. Reinventing a character, super sharp. Or maybe not reinventing, but bringing versions that have been very popular with Frank Miller.
The Bat voice wasn't...
the Bat voice is probably the most dated thing, but it doesn't bother me.
No. It doesn't in this one because he does it only like to the people, like to the bad guys. And I think in the next one he does it like all the time, and it's really weird.
He does say it. He does say it to like, and you'll never have to. You know, I've seen that meme like a bajillion times where he's with Commissioner Gordon at the end.
Yeah,
like, I never got to say thank you. But amazing cliffhanger ending in terms of like just setting it up. It's not a cliffhanger, I guess.
The whole train scene.
The train thing, really that's maybe where I would knock it on the Christian side, where he's like, I don't have to save you. You can kill him.
Yeah.
Like you can actually just kill Ra's al Ghul.
That's Batman's whole thing, though. Is like
exactly.
Yeah,
and that's where we're gonna kind of keep putting them here. But oof, man, I'm thinking S tier.
You're thinking S tier. What do you think about the two villains diluting like kind of their impact that they have? Do you feel like that's I know in other movies it doesn't work as well, but.
Yeah, I'm thinking the Spider-Man trilogy or whatever. But yeah, it works with this. It works with this. It's all balanced.
You want to go S tier with it?
I'll go S tier. If we need to bump them around, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. We can bump them around. I'm not gonna push too hard against that. I know you're.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this one too recently. I think I saw it probably like 3 years ago last time. But
so a little bit more on the Christian side of things. It's 100% within the Christian worldview, I guess. Hold on. I guess we hit this. We're going to go over on this one a little bit, but to take life in defense of life, and Ra's al Ghul is trying to murder an entire city. So, you all you have to do is just map it onto reality real quick, where it's like mass shooter is loose in a high school, and the cop is like, I don't want to stoop as low as that mass shooter. I'm not going to shoot him. And of course, it's good to catch them and try them. But like it.
Now, if there's like another reason, like you need to get their motive and you need to, all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
Then that's different, obviously, but not because you don't want to.
Even then, it's actively ending life. I'm destroying an entire city.
It's a mathematical equation. It's like, do you want to lose more lives or do you just want to lose one life?
And even you think about this, even it's become so popular to be like, we have to stop Trump. We have to stop Trump. We'll do anything to stop Trump. This is just me, right off the top of my head here, but like. That same morality, but the same people who would say like, oh yeah, of course we shouldn't like capital punishment or whatever, but like Trump is a existential threat to our civilization. That's what Ra's al Ghul was, but like literally evaporating the water supply, drugging everyone, making them go crazy, and killing and raping.
So you think Trump is like Ra's al Ghul, is what you're saying?
In certain people's minds, I'm not saying he is.
Okay.
Mr. Ra's al Ghul, or how does she say it in the movie? The lady at the party, Ra's al Ghul.
So many weird voices in the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, but you get Michael Caine. You get Michael Caine, and that's awesome. Michael Caine is as Alfred.
He's probably the best Alfred.
100%.
Who else is in contention? The animated one is probably in contention.
He's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good. I don't know that actor at all, but Alfred in the comics is like you see him in Dark Knight. You see it a little bit more developed, but there's just more for Alfred to do. And I really like that. But Batman Begins, formative in my personal film viewing as well. But we can get to the next one. Yeah,
and this is my favorite one probably. The Prestige from 2006. Hugh Jackman versus Christian Bale. This one was formative for me as well. Just again, him using the editing to tell a story, and not just like literally, but like in the style that it's edited.
Yes,
the film itself is telling a magic trick, and it's dueling magicians. It's so clever. It's well executed, well acted. I guess a lot of people don't like Scarlett Johansson's character.
Whatever. She's okay.
But I don't care. I thought she did fine. Didn't distract
everyone
too
else
much
is
for me.
Punching super hard. Hugh Jackman, one of his best performances ever.
Oh, yeah. Underrated. It's a very underrated film of Nolan's. It's not really mentioned.
I think it's well respected. I wouldn't say it's unsung like Insomnia. It's not that buried, but it's just fair. Like,
fair.
Yeah, that was good. If anything, people just think of it as being like, that's a weird thing to make a movie about, but it really, really works.
It does.
Magicians in the late 1800s or early 1900s,
He usually does like future or present day and Prestige. Or I guess, later he does more World War II stuff, but Prestige is like his earliest on the timeline.
True.
really
in terms
unique
of
for
the
him.
story, I think the bad guy doesn't get away. That's awesome. But yet it like really pushes it where it's like, oh, is he actually murdering people? Well, if he's legitimately cloning himself, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just so.
Yeah, is Hugh Jackman? I guess he is the villain. It's kind of like the villain is the main character again for Nolan.
Yeah, I mean that's just a tragic arc.
They're both like
doesn't start out that way.
Yeah, both of them are pretty stoop pretty low in a lot of ways. Christian
Yeah,
Bale and
the
Hugh Jackman's
one thing
character.
I really like about Christian Bale's character, or maybe it's his twin, I'm not too sure, is how he does try to save Hugh Jackman when he thinks he's actually stuck in there drowning. Because remember, he's like snooping around, and he like actually does try to save him.
Are you talking about the guy that's like his doppelganger, like the actual
presumably,
one?
or it might have been the original one, like
Yeah.
you know, or I guess it wasn't. I don't know. It's very
No,
hard
he didn't
to
find the machine at that point.
Well, it's when he drops down beneath the stage, and
Yeah, and it's like at the very beginning of the film.
yeah, he sees Hugh Jackman drowning.
And Christian Bale tries to save him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was a clone.
After everything they've been through, he still tried to save him, and it's like
That's true.
You know,
and you're like rooting for Hugh Jackman because like you feel that resentment,
and he's ambitious,
and he's really good, but like Christian Bale took away his wife.
Yes.
And he won't really like confess to
what
it.
What kind of knot did you tie? What kind of knot did you... Oh, it's so good.
How do you not know?
Yeah.
That was a great
he shouts that.
Yeah.
It really is. And that just really perfectly maps onto the way God has wired us with guilt, with anger, with revenge, all of these things playing themselves out. And of course, the revenge is hollow. And I think even Christian Bale's character does realize that at the end.
Yeah.
So again, I place this S tier.
Yeah, I do too. It is my favorite. So I want to. Do we put it ahead of Batman Begins or below Batman Begins?
I put it ahead of it.
Okay.
Because it's original.
Yeah. No, it's. I thought it was.
That's right. It is based on a book.
It is. It is based on a book.
That's fair.
They're both not original.
I guess it could cut either way for me because
the editing style is original, I guess. But
yeah, and again, that's where it really does work too.
Yeah.
Where he's bringing that into it with the diaries and everything. There's a lot of stuff that feels like it shouldn't really work, voiceover and that kind of stuff, but he makes it work, and I think that helps. And production value is very good.
Oh yeah.
This might have been the first film he did with Wally Pfister. Pretty sure.
Okay.
In terms of cinematography, but
nice.
Early muse of his, I think. But yeah, solid S tier. I think how you handle Batman, there's something respectable about something that has so much history. I come in and I give it new life, or like I'm coasting on all of that. You can kind of cut it either way. So it's like a little ambiguous for me in terms of whether it beats it or not. But
we can move it around later on.
Making something as goofy as Magicians really serious, I think, helps push that to number one right
1800s Magicians. Next, we have what many people consider his number one, The Dark Knight, 2008. Yes. Heath Ledger in a legendary performance, maybe considered the best of all time acting performance by the populace.
Yep, Batman versus 9/11. That's the plot here.
Yep.
Sort of. It's the Patriot Act type thing at the end where it's like, I have to see everyone. And in that way, it is really smart and wise. Morgan Freeman's character being like, dude, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But like, how do you stop evil? Do you go that far? And the answer is no. But also, the Batman stuff, we're going to hit this drum a little bit. Mm-hmm. He could just kill the Joker, dude. You just kill the Joker, man. Like,
it doesn't make for as good of a story for the. I mean, once he has him dangling upside down, kill him, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I think just don't save him falling off the roof. Like he falls off the roof, and then there you go. As opposed to they had him caught. I understand not killing him when he's in the actual jail cell. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But he has Maggie Gyllenhaal hanging out a window. You could kill him then too, dude. Like, and quite easily probably. So that certainly overshadows it in terms of a moral kind of framework. Again, Batman's like, you got one rule, or the Joker says you have one rule and you have to break it.
And he's literally telling him to kill me. Like several times in the film. Like, come on, I want you to hit me. And then when he's hanging over the roof, he's like telling you to break the rule. It's like, just do it, dude.
And people have
and that's not really a fault on Nolan. That's on the source material.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the rules that are established in the world, and it kind of is like working with it.
Yeah.
So again, I can't really knock Nolan for
I can't really knock him. Other than, there's the scene where he like hits that dump truck and it like slams up into the parking deck or whatever. That guy's totally dead. Or like flipping the semi truck.
Which part was that? Is that in the beginning?
No, that's when
parking deck sequence?
When right before Commissioner Gordon reveals that he's been alive. Like they're transporting Harvey Dent.
I don't remember that. 100%.
And there's a dump truck that shows up and the tumbler like smashes underneath it and it just goes right into the ceiling.
Yeah,
They used a
totally
miniature.
killed someone.
They used a miniature to shoot it, which looks amazing. But in that way, craft wise, this is Nolan punching hard.
Oh yeah,
like looks amazing. The IMAX stuff is amazing.
Powers. Yeah,
height of his creative powers. I think we don't really have a non-linear aspect here.
No, and that's good in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like got out of the way. You got yourself out of the way.
Don't force it. Yeah.
And, I think it's maybe a little bloated. We have the two villain thing again.
There's the whole, the third act with like the people in the boats and he's like, the whole Patriot Act and all that felt a little bloated. I think I think a good stopping point I heard someone say, I forget who, is like right after Harvey Two-Face is revealed. And then you just go into the third movie from there. And I feel like that would have been
you could have. Totally. And of course, Ledger dying doesn't help.
No, that would have, assuming that doesn't happen, that would have been great. But I think we're happy that we got all of Ledger in that movie.
Morality, a little murky. Craft, pretty high. Such a fun experience in the movie theater. Saw it multiple times.
I wish I saw it in theaters, man.
That's crazy, dude. This is like a Blade Runner type movie where I think it inspired our generation of filmmakers. This is what made people Nolan heads. Was this film and really.
So we want to put it below Batman Begins S tier, or do you want? You said I think I like Batman Begins better.
I think above Memento A tier.
Oh, you want to put it A tier?
Yeah.
Huh. Why is that?
The length.
That's true. Yeah, it is a little long.
Whereas like Batman Begins gets to the point. You get the meatiness of Batman. It's a more well-rounded single entry as opposed to a sequel. I'm going to knock it a little bit because it's dependent on previous source material. We also start to see a peak here in terms of his sound issues. There are so many lines in the movie that you don't even hear.
That's very true. We're going to get a lot of hate for this, but we'll put it in A tier. I think that's a good call.
Yeah.
The sound issues, I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah, there's a couple lines early on. And I think some of the writing is also not that good.
See you next fall or whatever.
Yeah. Have a nice trip. See you next fall. And then there are a couple other lines here and there. There are portions of it, and this is what you start to see. I think this is the tipping point for Nolan, where as a whole this film works. And this is maybe the last time I feel like it's not the last time that it works. I'm not going to say that, but there are later entries of his where portions of a whole film really, really punch super high, but when they're combined together into the film, like that's the unit that you receive is that movie, as opposed to like this opening bank robbery scene in Dark Knight is amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing filmmaking from beginning to end. Tense.
The whole performance of Heath Ledger is amazing.
Yes.
Like certain components of it are great, but the sum of the parts is
other
not.
Stuff is like starts to just fall into the backseat. So swapping out for Maggie Gyllenhaal, that drops it down to A tier in my mind. There's some lines that just don't make sense where Joker's like,
Who was it, Katie Holmes?
Look at her. Yeah. And I'm not here to compare Katie Holmes and Maggie Gyllenhaal, but there's things that's like Maggie Gyllenhaal, an attractive lady, sure, but I don't know if she's necessarily she doesn't meet what Ledger is selling with that line. He's not. He's like mega impressed.
Yeah,
and you're like,
that's fair.
Okay,
we put her in B tier.
Yeah. That broke my suspension of disbelief.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. It didn't.
Okay, I thought you were.
But no, people knock that as well, and I agree that it starts to get kind of like okay. But I think Maggie Gyllenhaal is a better actress than Katie Holmes. So I think it's a decent trade, maybe it's a 1-for-1, but up next.
All right, so Dark Knight in A tier, our first controversial move, maybe. One might say. Next is Inception 2010.
This is another big film.
This is a big one for Nolan. I think this might be like all of his, kind of like Memento, like a lot of his signature moves actually working for the plot of the film and making it a better film. Great acting, of course. Obviously, it doesn't.
Marion Cotillard, super great.
Oh yeah, very good. I guess she's kind of a villain.
Yep. Leo is awesome in this. It's like he's
Great
not
trickery.
Overdoing it,
No.
like there's a line there, here or there that is a little like, okay. Also, this one is tons of exposition. So that's in terms of
fair.
writing, I would say it doesn't hold up as much other than the fact that the concept is just fun.
It is fun.
So
how would you set it up differently? Like instead of having all of it just like, what's his name? Just explaining it to you, Gordon-Levitt. I forgot his first name.
Oh yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a mid-career bump a little bit with him coming back a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I can't say I have the exact answer for what that is. It's just when you rewatch this film, that's something that you end up. It's like, okay, they're just explaining this. They're explaining that. They're explaining this. Because it's so visually interesting with like the city folding up and all sorts of other things happening, that certainly sells it. But whenever your exposition is just exposition, it's considered bad writing.
They frame it in a way that it works. It's not just someone, it's just they're working a specific job.
He's training Ellen
training
Page's character.
I think they frame it up okay. It didn't bother me as much.
It's just enough. It's just enough.
It just gets through the door.
Yeah, and that's where I think this film got the reputation that it deserves, being a heady mainstream movie. It works just enough to get the common guy, common average moviegoer to show up and just be like, that was deep. That was cool.
Friend of the show, Colin, this is like the film that got him into filmmaking.
Yes.
This is another one of those that at Nolan's peak of like getting the next wave, the next generation of filmmakers in the door.
It feels like Shyamalan a little bit, M. Night Shyamalan, where it's like he wows you. He just, whoa, this was the film. So that's why so many people get on board.
Yeah.
Can he live up to that after this? Not certain.
We will see. We will. But I think I want to put this in S tier. This is like his peak. Again,
Agreed.
This was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
I believe it got actor nominations as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I definitely know it was Best Picture. It had to have been sound design and score as well.
Now, the ending, the message of the film, the central relationship is a man and his wife, a man getting over his wife. I do think that's interesting and doesn't break God's reality. It aligns perfectly with that.
His desires to be with his children and to take care of them. That's like his new goal, I guess, is to flee from that burden.
If anything, that's slightly underdeveloped. I get at the end with the top spinning and everything, like, oh, did he actually get to see his children? Like,
oh, it doesn't matter, Zach. It doesn't matter.
We're just gonna debate it whether he's in a dream.
It is a little. The fact that it doesn't matter makes it feel like a little bit selfish. Like he's just doing it because he doesn't care if it's real or not. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if he really cared about the well-being of his kids, he would want it to be reality. But anyways, I think I still want to put it in S tier, probably below Batman Begins or above.
I say above.
Yeah.
Conceptually, again, all him.
Yeah.
All him. He worked on it for a decade writing it.
I think it could go above Prestige. I think I'm willing to.
I would say that too. I would say that. I think the performances in the Prestige are better. That would be one of my biggest things. And there's just less characters that don't just
less
serve
confusing, I guess.
Simple components. Yeah. But the thing is, Nolan worked really hard to make sure that you were tracking with each dream. And I think I remember hearing Wally Pfister talk about this, the cinematographer, that each one they wanted to film with like a really specific feel, so you knew when they were cutting back and forth, where it's like, okay, this is a snowy landscape. You're in the furthest down dream. That's the next level craftsmanship for sure. Yeah. And executing super high concept to make it accessible for the everyman.
Great practical effects too. The spinning room is iconic. The train, yeah.
Yeah, the spinning room thing for sure. Very cool. So yeah, all that stuff, I think that does bump it up. And it being original. That's
actually
like
one of his better original. Cool. So now we are going to go to next. Zach's favorite, Dark Knight Rises.
All right, this movie sucks. So I say this movie goes bottom tier. Like whatever.
Oh boy. Well, let me hear your pitch to put it at the bottom, because I'm willing to lower it, but I don't know about the.
This
bottom.
is a movie that did not need to happen. So all the plot and a movie is bad, especially if it's a sequel, if it undoes things that were set up previously and not really in a way that pushes it forward or seemed inevitable in any way. So it just wasn't true to the character.
What was left hanging on the end of Dark Knight?
So
he ran off because he was he took the blame basically.
Yeah, and that's like a perfect ending for that's Batman.
That's true. That is a really good ending to the.
And the Dark Knight was supposed to be two separate films, so now you're like, okay, well, it feels like a fourth film Dark Knight Rises does, because it is.
Heath Ledger dying.
Heath Ledger's shadow being cast over the whole thing. I think Bane is a terrible bad guy in this film. He's a great bad guy in the animated series and the comic books.
But in this film, again, with the weird voices, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, the weird voices, the sound mixing. I don't, this is another, like a hot take within a hot take. I don't mind Bane's voice, like his accent.
Interesting.
I don't mind his accent. I think just it being kind of copied and pasted over everything in the room is a little weird. Sound-wise.
The filter that it's run through, like the mask or whatever.
Yeah, mixing it feels a little weird. I think Bane is just underdeveloped in general. And
the whole thing that we talked about this before, but like one of you is the trigger man being like a weird thing.
Doesn't even make any sense.
Doesn't make sense.
You're introducing things that feel so reachy, like you're just reaching. In a Batman movie, we see footage of the president of the United States. That feels weird. That the stakes are just. No, it's not Obama. It's some other guy. Okay. But he's like in the prison and he can see the TV and the president's like, so a lot of it also just doesn't make sense. The entire police force of Gotham City ends up underground, except for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. You just see a lot of manufacturing where the characters are being forced by the writer
Christian
to do
Bale
things.
Travels from the pit all the way to like Gotham City.
Just because he needs him to. Just because he needs him to. Catwoman kills Bane. She just does what Batman should do, which is kill a bad guy, Yeah. She just does it because she's, I guess, more morally corrupt or whatever. I don't know.
So Dark Knight is Batman versus 9/11. What is Dark Knight Rises?
Batman versus the 2008 economic crash. Way more boring.
That's right. They go into the Wall Street.
The stock market thing.
motorcycle.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's just, that's kind of cool, but it nukes Bane. Bane is supposed to be like the nemesis. He breaks Batman's back in the comics. He figures out who he is just by thinking about it. Like, that's awesome. And yet he's not a criminal mastermind in the end of this film. He is being...
It's Marion Cotillard again.
Yeah, he's being by Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia al Ghul. He's being manipulated.
Was she in the
that's
comics?
basically it. Is she what?
Was she a character in the comics? Talia?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she's like a love interest of Bruce Wayne and Batman. So that's cool. Okay. We're starting to get too crowded at this point.
Yeah.
We have like Catwoman's subplot where he like gives her a USB drive and he's like, this will clean your record or whatever. Because we have some sort of record of hers that she like really cares about. Feels just like
that's fair.
You just need to have Catwoman in this film because this is the fourth entry.
F tier.
Oh, I think this is F tier. This and even in...
Can we put it D tier? I think there's worse.
That's
you think
fair. We can put it D tier for now.
And it's in Pittsburgh. They filmed it in Pittsburgh.
That's F tier, bro. That's F tier. That's not a plus. That's not a plus at all. They have
the Steelers in there, my favorite team.
Yeah.
They Heinz Ward in there. Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing of like, oh, I'm going to blow up the city because one of the citizens is the trigger man. It's like M. Night Shyamalan trying to outdo himself. This is Nolan's Lady in the Water, or After Earth. It's just like, what is going on here? What are we doing? Like,
there's nothing positive to.
And if you really think about it for 2 seconds, it's a paycheck for Nolan, and he's like, the everyman will just eat this up because it's Batman. It doesn't need to make sense. He just kind of abandons all the commitments intellectually that he had before of making it make sense and be thematically interesting, because then he undercuts it, for like really cheap. It feels cheap. Batman, you hear a line about autopilot in the jet thing or whatever, and it's like, well, okay, all I have to do is remember. Okay, you're not going to wow me. You're not going to wow me.
I think you've swayed me to F
oh, really?
tier.
Well, here's one more. Here's one more. Marion Cotillard's Talia al Ghul's death scene is one of the worst death scenes I've ever seen in any film ever. She's just
poorly acted. Yeah,
and then just passes out.
My father's work is done.
He was a member of the League of Shadows. Batman was, or at least was around long enough. And he's like feeling on her back after they've made love in his mansion where he has no more money. Again, just all of these things happening in one film is so crowded. But he's like feeling on her back and he feels like what is it? It's not a birthmark, but it's like
I forget what it was.
It's like a branding for the League of Shadows. And it's like, you don't think he would recognize that? And he'd be like, oh, it just... again,
it is very crowded.
It makes the characters dumb just to move things around. And yeah, I think some of the music is amazing. If I need to say something polite about this film, it totally squanders Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. And Michael Caine is doing his absolute best to just do CPR on the film with his crying scene at the end. And I think this is the first time. It was
like in the middle when he leaves.
Yeah, I think he thinks that,
which was convincing, I guess.
It's convincing. Well, I'm saying, Michael Caine is an amazing actor, so he really made it work. But then he's like crying over his tombstone at the end. And he reads the Dylan poem where he's like, do not go gentle into that dark night or black night. Do not go gentle into the night, whatever it is. But he reads that. It's in Interstellar too.
Oh, okay.
So
I forgot he read that in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he does it at the funeral.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So anyway, it's just, you start to see like Nolan's like, you know what? I can just kind of fart this one out.
This is the fartistry cranking up.
No, fartistry is like you're taking something really seriously. This is, I'm doing it for a paycheck.
Well, he's getting like the same poem in his consecutive films, and he's like, he's really just jacking.
He's not reaching anymore. He's not working hard. He's just like, oh, this worked. Okay, this worked.
I don't know. Like a ton of money was put into this film. I think, like a lot of stuff was put into it. It just didn't work. Again, like it's trying to make a third and fourth film into just one film, like you said. It's just hard to do.
It also becomes meta, it becomes self-aware. So he, he's known in the first two films for like leaving in the middle of a conversation. Batman is like someone will be talking to him and on a rooftop, and then they'll turn and he's gone. In this one, they do that, and somebody does it to him, and he's like, "Oh, that's how that feels," and he says it in the Batman voice by himself.
To himself, yeah.
Like it
kind of turned into like the Marvel superhero film
a little bit. I don't think I wouldn't lay that at its feet. I would just say that it's lazy, and it's just
like a Marvel superhero film.
What am I gonna? Well, that's fair. Anyway, this is like a whole other episode. I feel like for this film, because this film actually taught me a lot more about filmmaking than any of his other films, because I felt so hard for The Dark Knight. I was the right age and everything. I'm like, this movie's amazing. And then when I knew another one was going to come out, oh man, this is going to be amazing. And then it just totally disappointed me. And
poor Zach.
I just started to watch it from a really critical eye. And I feel like that's actually what woke up my critical eye to be able to examine things. And
I actually saw the Dark Knight series in reverse order. So I saw this one first, then Dark Knight, and then Batman Begins.
Where were you, dude? Where were you?
I was in a household that was... it was somewhat sheltered, I would say, but
more Christian cringe. Other ditch that we have.
But I think I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I do think it is pretty crowded. I probably don't think it's F tier, but you feel very passionate about it, so I'm going to let you have this one.
Yeah, dude.
Let's we spent another 3 minutes on that.
easily.
So let's go on to one of his more controversial films, if not the most, Interstellar. 2014, Matthew McConaughey.
Yep, we're in the middle of the McConaissance, maybe post McConaissance peak a little bit.
Yeah. So Zach is just to we've talked about this many times off camera, but Zach is on one side and I'm on the other side. Zach does not like this film, and I like it. I have my reasons. I think it's well done. This is I think a lot of his storytelling is done well. A lot of where he goes to the water planet and it like fast forwards several years and he sees his whole family flash before his eyes. I think that scene is very well done, and I think it's kind of like The Dark Knight in a lot of ways, where it's like a lot of elements are done super well.
Yes,
but the sum of its parts is not.
Yes, that is
it's not
succinctly put. That is my opinion of this film.
Okay,
it never rises
agree.
above
We just
the sum of its
had
parts.
different expectations going into it, I think.
I
had like zero expectations.
I did
going
too.
in.
I did
you
too.
did? Okay.
Yeah. So I just watched it, and the problem is, a lot of times, especially as a writer, I can't turn off like thinking like a writer, and I know a setup when a setup is happening in front of me. It's not disguised well enough, or I can really see the ending of what's going to happen here. So when the ghost,
so you saw it at the beginning.
Yeah, the ghost is like doing the dust on the floor and everything, and I'm like, oh, it only really makes sense if it's him or his dead wife. Doing that, like, because it's in the daughter's bedroom. Like, who
either
else
that or it's going to be an even worse film.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, exactly. And I know that probably wouldn't be the case for him. So I'm like, is this another cheap trick, or just like lazy? I look like a thinking man, but I'm not. Like this is the most basic idea of
like he's trying to pull
travel.
one over on us, I guess.
Yes,
is what you're thinking.
You
like,
take
this is some alien life or whatever.
Yeah, you take an 8th grade physics class, and you know of the time dilation issue with leaving a planet, and you come back and the people there are old and you're still young. So I'm like, okay, he's going to go to Interstellar. I know that. Okay, so maybe, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. So you had some
sort of expectation. I didn't even know anything was going to happen going into it. Like,
I probably ruined it for myself. But that said, like the robot, TARS, amazing. One of the best robots I've ever seen
practical,
ever.
I think it's like CGI and practical mixed. Done very well.
Yeah.
Very well executed. Practical stuff is very well. The Tesseract, the whole like where he's in the bookshelf.
Oh, that's amazing. I actually loved Matt Damon's reveal.
Yeah.
I know some people might think that's like kind of a cheap, like, oh, here's this guy. But no, it was awesome. And then that whole fight.
They talked about him beforehand, and I guess you didn't know the actor, but like
the themes of the film as well about family, humanity. Does humanity matter? You know, in an age of like nihilism and evolution, telling you that we're nothing greater than stardust or whatever. We don't really matter. We engineer our own meaning and value. That people are fighting so hard to continue the human race. That's really interesting to see on film. And love is a very important aspect. Anne Hathaway's character is doing so many things for love. Her husband, I think, has been shipped off somewhere. And she's like trying to get back to him or something like that. But that really works. And I think the total depravity of the human race as well is very on display here. Theologically speaking, we see this in Scripture. For all have fallen short of the glory, and we're all born into sin. That you see Matt Damon and Matthew McConaughey fighting on this planet, and then the camera kind of pans up and away, as if to kind of show you, like, no matter where humanity goes, our fallen nature goes with us. At least that's my kind of interpretation. Or like, look at these little specks; they don't matter. So you could kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like it really lands in the whole like we don't matter type thing.
Pervasiveness of God's creation of humans.
Yeah,
and
the resilience.
It's constant. I think it does speak to the resilience of God's creation. Obviously, time is big. Things that exist outside of our understanding.
Yeah.
Do you think it does a service to Calvinism, to predestination, understanding that like time is kind of like laid out, and it's just kind of like
it's predetermined? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think that was actually like a really interesting thing that I didn't really think about until just doing like some research before. Yeah. But I think that's really interesting. Helps you kind of understand. It might not be like exactly how it works, but
yeah, I think it reaches for those types of things, and I think it successfully does it. One of the big knocks I have is the beginning of the film. It's 45 minutes too long. We need to get to him being in space. A lot of stuff just happens because it just that needs to happen for the character. He's apparently the best pilot on Earth. And he finds NASA, who's been looking for him by accident. Yeah. And I get, you kind of get to the whole, like,
it's on
what you just brought up. Yeah, exactly. But when you're watching it, not knowing that he's being led there by himself or whatever, it's just like.
They could have set that up better in a quicker and better way, a lot more efficient.
And then when they actually like launch in space, it's like one super close up shot of the rocket going like up, like it's just like, okay, so you know when to be brief. Yeah. Instead of like sitting there watching. That was great,
like him like hoping his daughter's in there and she's not. I think it gets a lot of emotional beats dead on. Like I got really emotional watching this film actually. Yeah. I think it hits hard, and cutting with the rocket launch was really good. Yeah, so it does know sometimes, but I don't know, Nolan again, it's a little muddled in his writing sometimes.
Yeah, we're not super, editing wise. He's kind of backed off that a little bit. It's
not super nonlinear. Stuff. It's more like the time is just happening around it nonlinear.
Yeah, the whole idea is like it's all happening at the same time a little bit.
I guess very linearly
when he's floating through the Tesseract thing, but
I think it gets the score is immaculate.
Awesome.
I think it's his best score that he's had in the film.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer punching so hard.
I think I want to put it. I want to put it in A tier. I know Zach doesn't. How would you feel about below B tier?
I'll put I'll put it A tier. I'll put it A tier.
Lower A tier.
Yeah,
below Insomnia. I'm cool with that. Okay, cool. I'm glad we can agree on that. Did we even hit 3 minutes yet?
I turned off the
Anything
timer
else you
for
want to
that
say
one.
about it?
I turned off the timer because I knew we were going to go over on that one. So no, nothing else. I mean, yeah. Again, it is what it is. Like, I think there's people who just love that movie unconditionally because it's impressive in certain parts, and they don't think about everything else. It's like you can't just love the marshmallows of Lucky Charms. You got to eat. Like, to have Lucky Charms, you got to eat both the dog food and the marshmallows.
If it was just marshmallows, it'd be the best cereal, but it's
not
knocked down. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. And now we are going on to 2017's Dunkirk. This is 3 years after Interstellar. This is what?
D tier.
Yeah.
Maybe even F tier. Actually, I'd put it F tier.
I think I'd probably put D tier.
The characters take a back seat. The editing is a labor for you to like figure out. The point of the film, I guess, is maybe the morality of the film is one of the better things. But the guy that ends up killing Barry Keoghan's character, the kid on the boat, he just gets away with it.
Yeah.
He just like walks away. So I don't really know what you're telling me, Nolan. What are you telling me?
Well, his whole thing going into it, which I guess you had to know before you watched it, was that like he's trying to make a film that could be played in museums. He wants it to be like as perfect to reality, which is very Fardist-like.
100%.
He's trying to pull that off.
It belongs in a museum. Well, then don't play it in a movie theater.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's I don't care about any of the characters. They don't speak for like the majority of the film. And I'm not endeared to them really. I guess
cares?
You get screen time with the main guy. I forget it. Harry Styles is in it, which is weird.
Yeah. And the main guy, there's like the mystery of like, oh, who is he?
Yeah.
And that's
just knowing
not
like
that
a little bit of his backstory might have been interesting. I don't know. They could have made it way more interesting, but you're just getting this really grand story. And so the individuals don't matter as much.
Yes.
And so don't give us too many individual
Which,
characters.
as a Brit himself, you would expect, and he knows that the Battle of Dunkirk is really important to the Brits. So why not go hardcore? Like, you get to see the Brits for who they really are. And I know you do.
You get like the whole
guys in the
ship
boats.
fleet coming in. And
yeah, you do see that. But
Mark Rylance.
Mark Rylance's
really
little bump in his career right there. Like, is it really that cool? I don't know. I think the only time I really cared is when Tom Hardy was on screen. That man.
Yeah, there was a little bit of non-linearity with him, I remember, and it was really weird, and it stuck out to me. I only saw it in theaters, and I haven't seen it since, so I don't remember exactly how it went.
The best part. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the non-linear moments are like, why is he doing that here? Like, you want to tell this for how it is, and now you're just
it's not super hard to piece together, or it's not super easy to piece together like the other films because the characters are so weak. I'm not following any real plot.
Yeah,
like I think the music is the best part. Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, I mean, Hans Zimmer does amazing.
Is doing it with the shepherd's tone. It's just continually rising. It's like an audio illusion.
A little ticking in the background for the high tense moments was really good. So yeah, I think it's a D tier. I agree with that.
Easily.
Yeah.
Dunkirk.
All right.
We're done with you.
Yeah,
we don't even have our timer. It's 10 seconds left. We just picked up some more time.
Sweet. Let's wrap it up into Tenet. 2020's Tenet. This was the movie that was going to bring back movies. The height of COVID.
It's going to save us after COVID. This movie also sucks, dude. This movie sucks.
It sucks. I think it's his worst, in my opinion.
The craft is pretty high. We have Hoyt van Hoytema, I think, on.
He did the score, yeah.
No, he's the cinematographer.
Sorry, I got that confused. It wasn't Hans Zimmer who did the score, I recall, but it was a new guy.
A new guy, yeah.
Ludwig van Goranson is who it is.
Yeah. And that score is amazing. The score we're getting into the like nicher kind of technical aspects of the film where it's like that was cool. Performances here, not that great. Robert Pattinson is the best part, I think. He's the one who actually, like, when he's on screen, you're like, okay, cool. Oh, a cool guy.
Yeah. The protagonist.
Yeah.
That's his name.
They call me the protagonist. That's some straight up film school level writing, Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Straight up.
It is.
So bad. And then this plot is unintelligible. This is fardistry at its purest. You've tried to be clever and you end up alienating people.
Yeah.
You thought you had something original on your hands, and it's like,
the concepts again are cool. Like, that's his whole thing. Like, he gets a really cool concept or like plot device, and he just couldn't spin a good story around it because it's too weird. Like, but some of the like stuff it gets right, the choreography, like the scenes where one person's going backward in time and one person's going
that stuff is cool, and they're fighting.
It's very
but
cool.
The more you think about it, it becomes hard to think about.
It just doesn't make sense though. But,
in your head,
doesn't fit into reality.
Again, cool concepts like having to wear the oxygen mask because air molecules don't go the same way. Basically, I don't know. That type of stuff. It's like you're being a slave to some aspects.
Now, what if this film is
full,
like? Go ahead. I'll let
you want to go full like Marvel movie and just like then don't do the oxygen thing.
That's what I was going to say. Is this film has to be campy for it to work? I think. If it was campier and it didn't take itself too seriously.
Yes.
The protagonist is, and like whoever's taking him through the forward and reverse time at the beginning of the film is telling him like not to think about it too hard. But
they literally,
Nolan himself and everything that he's doing in the craft itself is telling you to think about it too hard.
Yes.
He is telling you to take it seriously. Whereas like I feel like if they were to relax and joke about it here and there or something, maybe not like to like, in an actually funny way.
Not Marvel, bad Marvel kind of thing. But again, if you're making a comic book level concept here, then just roll with that. Like, don't make people think too hard about it. Don't take it so seriously that you're like you're filling in all the details on things.
Yeah.
But your broad strokes don't make any sense. That and just again, very obvious. It seemed like after a certain point.
And this is also like the pinnacle of his horrible sound mixing. He's telling you Nolan's telling us, the viewers, there's our timer.
Yeah, you're good.
Nolan's telling us outside of the film, it's on purpose. You're not supposed to pay attention to it. But again, like everything else is telling you need to pay attention.
I've heard people have a totally different experience watching it at home with subtitles on.
Yeah, I totally did.
And
I watched it in the theaters, and then going at home. I watched it in theaters with my brother and a really good friend of mine, and we were all like, I have no idea what I just watched, man. This is unintelligible. I could tell it was like well executed, but had no idea what happened. And then I went home and watched it with my wife, and with subtitles, she picked it up instantly, and then I was able I kind of I can pick up what's going on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense, but it's a fun movie to turn your brain off to. It's not good for Nolan, but again, if you lean into the campiness and kind of just
Nolan can't do
stupid.
camp. Nolan can't do camp, and you realize it's kind of that thing where everybody can be dark and serious, but if you can't be funny, being funny is really hard, and balancing that as a tone. Nolan can't be funny.
This is bottom.
Yeah, agreed. A technical level, awful. Story level, awful. Again,
practical effects were done well.
Practical effects are done well. Message of the movie, it's so muddled. I don't even really know what's going on. Like there's destiny, so there's that kind of idea.
It's begging to be a comic book movie.
Yes. Yeah. Give me and get away from some of the humans are capable of this and the kind of MacGuffin style stuff where it's like they needed to get some sort of device and they're like these weird interlocking things. I don't know what that is. Like I don't know. It just get off your high horse, okay, dude.
I think the concept could work. I think the story could work. We'll leave with this. He just has to not take it seriously, and that's where he really got it wrong. You could fault him on that alone, and I think everything else would have worked out fine if he didn't take himself so seriously.
Yes.
And now to his latest film, 2023's Oppenheimer, winner of Best Picture. Wow. Is it Nolan's Best Picture, Zach?
No, it isn't. I would put it at a solid, probably D tier, just above Dunkirk.
Whoa. Okay. I think it's C
bloated.
tier. I think this might be besides Dark Knight, it's probably our hottest take. I think the public has been enamored with this film. It obviously won Best Picture. Everywhere I look, reviews, everyone's like, "Oh, this is his best film. This might be his best film."
It's probably,
and I totally don't think that at all.
No, it's most accessible in terms of the subject matter. I get it. I'm not like in super crazy territory. It's got some of the best performances. Cillian Murphy, great.
Best actor. Yeah.
I think actually Emily Blunt is awful.
I did not like her role.
Awful in this movie. Some of the makeup is terrible. When they get old, they look awful. Show me stock footage at that point, dude. Don't waste
honestly,
the money.
That would be really cool.
And they wanted to sneak in a line or whatever, like where she's like dismissive of, I think, Matt Damon's character or something. I can't remember.
I forget.
But also, the stakes are high and low at the same time. So
The
atom
story
bomb
that's being
blowing
told,
up, yeah, blowing up all of the Earth, all of creation. That's pretty bad. But also, we're supposed to care that
Supposed to
Oppenheimer
sympathize
is
with
losing his
Oppenheimer.
security clearance.
Yeah.
You know, and like has
Yeah.
to sell a house at some point, I think is something that she says. She's like, we'll have to do this to survive or whatever. And it's like, yeah, as like a normal guy, I just can't relate to this.
All right. I mean, like, hopefully I don't find myself in a situation, but that's like low stakes is really what it is, you know? Like,
Yes.
So what? Like, I might have to do that one
The movie
day
should
for
have
whatever
ended
reason.
about the bomb. It should have just ended when that, and maybe a few years after that, where he's still dealing with it, and he maybe
Yeah.
does a famous interview at the end where he says like, "I regret dropping the bomb."
Yeah.
You know, that's it. But the whole thing
The
with
interrogation.
Robert Downey Jr.'s character, and that whole thing about, you know, communism is a real thing and has destructive, and lots of ideologies do, of course, but in our current day, we're still talking about it. And Nolan he doesn't want to tell you if he's pro or against it. You know, he's kind of like Oppenheimer, where he's like, I'm just flirting with it. You know, I'll bang a communist, you know, and that's actually one of why I drop it down to D tier, where there's the nudity.
Films like Insomnia made me think like, oh, maybe Nolan might be Christian, you know, but like this one is like, oh no, like
no, and
with the amount of control he has over films,
he wanted critical attention for this
Yeah.
film. He'd gotten close with a few other things, and so he wanted to win for this one, and that's what people told him. Like, hey, you need to do things that are more serious. You know, it's like Disney Channel stars. You need to get naked on camera for people to take you seriously.
That was when Anne Hathaway and James Franco hosted the Oscars. She got nominated for was it Love and Other Drugs? I never saw it.
Yeah.
And she said, like one of her jokes in the opening monologue was, "If you get naked, you get nominated."
Yeah.
And so it rings true for Nolan as well.
I
hope Nolan doesn't get naked, but
I think it was either Penelope Cruz or Salma Hayek who was either of them. Whoever played Frida Kahlo. I can't remember who it was, but they won Best Actress. And want to know who wanted the full nude scene and forced her to do it? She didn't want to do it.
Who?
Harvey Weinstein, the king of the Oscars. As Meryl Streep called him from the stage, God.
So
gross. Think about this. About
this.
Then you see Nolan, who's never done this, never needed to do this to make a film that's interesting in any way. And then you have Florence Pugh in here getting naked.
Yeah.
And
Cillian Murphy.
And that's true. I don't think you actually see any nudity.
You don't see anything, but he is naked.
He is naked. That's true. But just one of the hackiest, if I can like step into this worldview for a second, one of the hackiest like nude scenes as well, like sex scenes where they're in the middle of actually having sex. And I don't know, this isn't true to human nature by God creating us. When you are doing it, you don't want to stop doing it to go read Sanskrit. You know what I mean?
Ruins the quote. The "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Ruins the quote.
You haven't become death. You ruined this moment, you know, because she's the one who gets up and like goes across the room and grabs a book. It looks like at random, and then walks up and like holds it in front of her chest and is
so
like,
campy.
"Read this." It's not campy. It's just bad. Like it's
just
inhuman.
I need this to happen, so it's just going to happen.
That's where Nolan is at his worst. He's like, I just need this to happen. You see, I'm just puppeteering here. That's all I'm really doing.
He really comes through there.
You don't really understand humans, and that's really what it is. It kind of reminds me of Robert Zemeckis, who's gotten like less and less interested in humans, and so everything becomes animated. You know, he doesn't want to deal with people.
Roger Rabbit was good.
Roger Rabbit's God tier, S tier.
Yeah,
you know,
we'll do
amazing.
a Robert Zemeckis ranking later.
That actually that'd be pretty fun. I'd have to see some films that I don't want to watch though. But anyway, Oppenheimer. Was it better than Barbie? Yes.
I put it better. Yeah, it was definitely better than Barbie. Oh, that's
hands down.
What should have won Best Picture? Did we say that in our Oscar episode? You picked Godzilla -1.
Yeah, I think it wasn't nominated, but
it wasn't, but it should have.
Best Picture.
I think I said Anatomy of a Fall. Both are better than Oppenheimer. Definitely.
Agreed.
So I put it above Dunkirk. I think Dunkirk. I just don't care. It's worse than
agreed.
It doesn't anger me. It just is nothing, you know. So Oppenheimer at least like gets you riled up. Yeah. And there's some good things, like, you know, he always gets the score pretty well. And
Ludwig Göransson did an amazing job again. Some of the cinematography, some of the effects they did, the bomb and all of that, awesome stuff. again,
very
Cillian
epic
Murphy,
in a lot of
great.
ways. It just should have ended sooner. That's another thing.
The whole Robert Downey Jr. character, somebody who's not known by history, the kind of bookended. This is told out of order as well. The bookended story the aide, basically the Robert Downey Jr.'s aide, like leaving him at the end because he realized he's a bad guy in DC. No, that feels so unrealistic and so preachy. Again, wanting the attention of the Academy for some of the most basic political takes ever. Basically kind of flirting with communism and then saying atom bombs are bad. It's just like, without showing any devastation of the bombs either, feels a little cheap for the runtime.
Yeah, show me how bad it is.
It's so bad. Yeah. Show me.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly. Do you want to, you've told me off camera many times, but do you want to go on your rant about biopics? Your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like biopics. If you want to learn more, this is the problem. If you want to learn more of somebody, go watch a documentary, go read a book, go read a biography or an autobiography by that person.
Yeah.
Biopics most of the time are like just a form of
Historical
imitation
fiction.
porn.
Yeah.
It's just imitation porn where can we get this actor who really looks like this real person to do a good voice, to do a good impression of them. One of my favorites, if anything, one of the best in the genre is Steve Jobs with Michael Fassbender. That guy doesn't look like Steve Jobs at all, but he imbues the character of him. And Aaron Sorkin peels back the layers in like a very theatrical, like stage play kind of way with the
Ashton
structure.
Kutcher looked like him.
Well, that's the problem. That's what most people shoot for biopics.
It's a great comparison of what gets bad ones.
Bottom of the barrel and the top of the barrel. And the biopics are just lazy. And they have a built-in
what are they
audience.
for? It's basically like the Disney remake of reality. It's just an IP that you want to look back on. That's it's not as good as the original. You watch the documentary.
Because people are lazy and they don't want to do the research. And I get it. Nolan did do research. He read the book about Oppenheimer. And I think the whole Robert Downey Jr. thing, I didn't know any of that. I just don't think that's interesting, though. I don't think you're like manufacturing drama at that point, as opposed to like that actually was dramatic. That actually was interesting. You could have just framed it entirely differently with half of the runtime. And that's really what it is too, is like a slave to his own love of time,
bloated and runtime
themes,
non-linear moments.
Yes, for no reason. No reason. Like you never really felt like, and there were so many characters in Oppenheimer as well, like keeping track of them. So there were a lot of moments where he had to just keep reminding you them, like people saying people's actual names out loud, which doesn't usually happen. The whole trial in the back room really didn't feel
that was
real.
The whole thing about him getting like his security taken away or whatever.
Yeah, and like that's the stake here. He's not going to prison or anything. It's just like you're not going to work for the U.S. government anymore. It's like okay, the guy's a genius. Does it really matter? Like, this guy is a well-known historical figure. He has earned his place in history. What do I care?
It's not a Nolan story. It's not something with his. It doesn't play to his strengths.
No, maybe cerebral in that way, where it's like we're talking about atom bombs and stuff like that.
He tried to do Howard Hughes before Scorsese got it.
Yeah,
that I don't know. Based off that, I'm glad he didn't. I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a different time it would have ended up differently, but and then I don't know. I think I would probably bop down. Going back to our tier list here, I'd probably bop following down a tier.
Really? To C tier?
Yeah, I just would. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe Interstellar to B. That's what I said A, but I don't know. I feel like we're talking about Nolan sniffing his own farts, and this is really
that's fair.
That.
Again, runtime starts to get bloated. It's like I need to make a 3-hour movie for no reason.
Yeah.
Again, I think I've said this to you a million times, Johnny. I think these big name directors, like Francis Ford Coppola with Megalopolis and all this kind of stuff, that make a terrible film late in their career. I'm not saying Nolan is that far in his career, but these guys just need to go back to the basics. Just Nolan making a horror film.
Yeah.
Just like straight from the book, non-linear, so linear, just straight A to B. That would be cool.
It would.
And give me like a fun concept.
And like, Insomnia-esque.
Bring your prowess as a technician to something smaller, and I think that goes a further way. It becomes more enjoyable more often. And more often than not, the things that the Academy recognizes aren't actually, they don't hold up very well.
No.
They're so trendy. They're so of the moment.
Congrats. Coda also won Best Picture.
Yeah, I've never seen Coda, and I forgot about that till just now.
Yeah.
You know, not to say that there isn't a purpose to it, and I track it from time to time, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well, Oscars are, you know, they sometimes get it right. You know, you just have to use
a broken clock.
You have to use your yeah, exactly.
It's a broken clock. But is this list? Are we going to pour the concrete on it? Does this feel?
Yeah. So just to recap, we have in S tier, we have Inception, The Prestige, and Batman Begins. And then in A tier, we have, controversially perhaps, we have The Dark Knight, Memento, and Insomnia. Then in B tier, we have Interstellar. C tier, we have Following. D tier, we have Oppenheimer and Dunkirk. And then F tier, we have Dark Knight Rises and Tenet.
Yeah.
I'm cool to pour the concrete. Let it set.
Yeah. Let that concrete set. That feels good.
Yeah.
Some things are like quibbling. I could quibble over some things, but I'm not really moving anything at that point. I would maybe knock a film out of S tier. Feels like a lot of S tier.
He had an amazing peak, you know, like those three films.
Yeah.
And Dark Knight was probably,
he's earned the respect.
Like it's controversial because Dark Knight, a lot of people would put in S tier. That's a strong string of movies. It's kind of like Coppola-esque, where you get Godfather and
Apocalypse Now, The Conversation.
Part 2. Godfather Part 2, like just a good, you hit your peak.
It's an interesting idea of that directors really only have like 4 good films in them. And I think a lot of times it's because they have certain themes that they're really interested in, and they can't keep that going without it seeming redundant, or they have to like manufacture things to make it happen, or they step way out of their wheelhouse and it doesn't work.
That's what you were encouraging Nolan to do. Step out of your wheelhouse.
I know. Well, yeah, it's a risk. It's a risk. I'm not saying it's not, you know, but it's like explore something else. Explore something else here, bro. But I will put money on that Nolan's next film, which is already, there's like rumors about it being probably another biopic with Matt Damon, that it's probably not going to be even as good as Oppenheimer. That we're already on the downward slide for him.
Yeah. His next film, we're going to put in F tier too. So, you know.
Yeah. Don't even make it, dude. It's going straight into the F tier. It's got an F tier pipeline over here. No, I think D tier is probably where it will end up, depending on the subject matter and the themes. Again,
his biopics are in the
our
D
analysis
tier.
of the morality of these films. You know, it could go harder, it could go a lot deeper, but this is just right off the top of the dome. What our thoughts are, and I do think Inception, Prestige, and Batman Begins are really solid there.
Yeah.
So
and A tier also super solid. That's 6 really good films he got out. So,
yeah, I think that's
there. You have it.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, as hot as it might be. I don't know. In terms of, we might do a review here of some of these other films late in the year. Some new releases. We did Civil War earlier this year, which feels like 5 years ago at this point.
Might have a Christmas present with Nosferatu, where we've been talking about going out
or
to
The
see.
Return. I'm really interested in The Return with Ray Fiennes as Odysseus. I'm a big Odyssey head, so I'm going to drag Johnny to go see that probably.
I'm up for it.
There's also The Brutalist with Adrian Brody, but that movie's 3.5 hours long. I just saw that.
Brutalist. Is that this year? It's releasing?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Comes out, I think, on Christmas as well, or near it. Maybe the 20th, maybe.
Okay. But a lot of movies.
I mean, 3 movies in December. That's true. We're kind of picking them up.
We might do one of them. We'll decide.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so folks, thank you so much for listening. You can find our socials and everything in the bio or in the description of these episodes. Please follow us wherever you like to be on social. And if you don't find us there, shoot us a DM on one that we do exist on, and we might join that one. You never know. But no, we do want to hear from you guys. We still have our free script review thing happening. Haven't gotten a single one. Our inbox is completely empty. So, dude, you're not clogging up the pipeline. You have a script you want thoughts on? Send it to old ZP, and I will give you a good old GDB review, and maybe even get on the horn with you, have a conversation about it. Love to connect with Christian artists, and we hope you enjoyed this first of our tier listing ranking episodes, and more to come for sure. Now let's get out there and work heartily for our good and gracious God, the Redeemer of men. Thank you for listening to God Deserves Better, a production of Pemmican Studios.